Sydney grew up on the Hawaiian island of Oahu in a tight-knit community with a culture that she says expects men to be tough and keep their emotions to themselves. Her father was one of those men, loving and strong, but never one to share what he was going through. When her younger sister went missing in late 2023, Sydney and her family were thrust into the national spotlight overnight, causing huge stress and exposing them to the brutal commentary of countless strangers online. Sydney's dad flew to Los Angeles to search and tragically never returned home. The immense distress of the situation contributing to his suicide. It pushed Sydney into the darkest period of her life, grieving her father and questioning everything while trying to protect her son. Now, a year on, she's slowly rebuilding herself, launching her own mental health brand to create change and raising her son to be able to share his feelings. This is Sydni Kobayashi.
Welcome to Youngblood, the volunteer video podcast dedicated to young men's mental health. I'm your host, Cal McPherson, and this is a platform for young men and their loved ones to share lived experience stories and show that no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. Suicide is the number one killer of young people, and changing that starts with speaking up. So let's do it. This show touches on some tough topics that may provoke strong emotions. If you find anything in this chat distressing, please do whatever you need to do to look after yourself.
Sydney, can you just tell me about where you grew up and what that was like?
So I was born and raised out here on Oahu in Hawaii. My parents divorced when I was pretty young. I want to maybe say like 6 or 7, or maybe even before that. I don't remember much of my childhood, just because it was so long ago. But yeah, and then growing up, my dad would have my sister and I on the weekend, and then we would spend time with his side of the family. And then my mom had us during the weekdays. For a majority of the time she had us, that she was, working and trying to raise 2 girls. And yeah, it was a constant state of busyness for her just because she was trying to do her best. And, the cost of living out here is very expensive. And that was way back then too. And even back then it was like really hard to work and take care of kids and juggle everything. So I know that she did the best she could. And then, my dad did too. We had a really good relationship with his side of the family, even though they were divorced.
And tell me a bit about the place that you grew up in and where you live now.
We grew up in Wahiawa, which is a part of the island. It's a little bit of older like houses, and it was very family friendly and a really safe neighborhood to grow up in. Like we would walk to school and come back home and whatnot. And then right after I graduated high school, we moved over to Waimanalo, which is the east side of the island, and I lived there for about 16 years. And now I'm in Pahalu, which is also the east side of the island. And Hawaii in general is just so small. All of the islands, like you can circle around twice in like the whole day, or maybe even more. So it's a very close-knit community. Everybody knows everyone here for the most part. Stuff happens everywhere, but for the most part, it's pretty safe. And when something does happen, everyone will know about it.
What would you say about what you've seen in terms of how Hawaii community talks about mental health?
I think that it's starting to become a little bit more open. I think that we can do a lot more here. I think it should be something that should be normalized a little bit more, because a lot of the men here in Hawaii, or at least the generation that I grew up in, they were taught to not show any emotion, and that they had to just continuously be strong for their families and just go to work. And the men had to be, that strong force, and the women were the caretakers as far as, taking care of her kids and, doing things around the house. Like, very traditional. It was never really like blended to where it's balanced out that both sexes do either or. I think that part is becoming a little bit more normal now as I get older. I'm seeing it, but culturally, it's just like that's exactly what it was. Like the men have to be stern, and if they showed any sign of like emotion or vulnerability, that it was kind of like a sign of weakness. So you would have it like get beaten into, like that's not okay.
Tell me a bit about what your dad was like as a man.
He had hobbies. Like he would go fishing. He was a skin diver when we were younger. So he would always go diving. We would always have like, fish or taco, which is octopus, like, that's what he would go out for. And then as he got older, he started fishing on like a smaller boat. But I just always remember him being productive, but he was a very like outgoing guy around his friends and everything and around family. He was a little bit more reserved, but he was very much like a provider for his family. He did have that sternness about him, so it was hard for him to show affection or like, affection in like a loving way towards us growing up. But, and he always had his little silent ways of like showing us that he loved us and that he cared.
And what about showing emotion himself throughout your young life? Would you see times when he was struggling? Would he let that show ever? Like, it must have been hard being divorced from your mum and trying to raise kids and then all the other pressures of life.
I never saw that side of him. I don't know if he did it in the dark, like, if he just did it on his own, but I never really did see him break down emotionally in front of us. He would kind of get frustrated every now and then, but then he would kind of just like tuck it away. And then, he was very like chill. He was just easygoing, chill, especially as he got older with age. And then, he retired recently before all this stuff happened. And he was just living a very simple, like everyday, like routine life of just being able to finally relax after working so hard for however many years.
What happened from there, given that he was a pretty relaxed guy and he'd retired and he'd done all this work and he'd reached what would you think would be a nice time in life? What was going on with him, do you think?
I think that's what I still struggle with to this day. I know that I want to say that the whole situation with my sister definitely pushed him over the edge because I was there he was out in LA for a couple of weeks. He was actually the first one to get there to start looking for my sister. And then he asked me not to come. But when I did go out there, I could just see it totally, like he was defeated in a sense. I have no knowledge of him ever like struggling through any sort of mental health or like issues or having any sorts of problems in his life. Like, he was doing well for himself. I mean, he had been living in our grandma's house. Like, he was taking care of it. He didn't like, he just never showed anything or any signs of us ever having to worry about, him committing suicide or anything like that. So when it did happen, it just completely shook me and caught me off guard. And I was extremely rattled by it. Like, I had no idea. And if I had known, then I probably would have asked him to, I would have been more aware. I feel like I should have been more aware of it. Or, I don't know if that's just something that happens after the fact, but it's definitely, there's a lot of guilt involved. Like, wish I could have done this. I wish I could have done that. But yeah, I think that's the hardest part for me is that I still don't know why he did it or why he couldn't just say something. I don't know.
Having lost a friend to suicide myself and spoken to a lot of people who've lost someone to suicide, that's the hardest part about it, and different to people dying suddenly by other means is the whole why part of it, and asking that question and not being able to get the answer that you need, and you can torment yourself over it, and then people can tell you it's not your fault and it's absolutely not your fault. That doesn't feel like it means much, or like particularly registers when people tell you that, and think about, well, I could have called at this time, or when he said this, was he inferring this? And you can go on and on and on forever doing that. Really sorry for your loss and that you had to experience something so devastating like that. And unfortunately, a typical story in that there were no signs, and your dad was typically stoic and never showed really any struggles, and then all of a sudden was gone, and that it just happens quite often.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for the loss that you had to go through too. It's not anything that I would wish on anyone it's a very unexplainable feeling, honestly. It's like a whole nother level of emotion and feelings and thoughts that go through your mind. And I mean, I have lost people to suicide before, and it's hard, but when it's apparent, it's just it's a different process, I feel like, too. But yeah, it's been rough.
Yeah, and that he was the guy who was always, sounds like he was the rock through everything, and nothing ever really phased him that much, and you could always count on him, and you were lucky to have a dad like that. And so it's the furthest thing from your mind to imagine that someone like him, who's your hero, who's always been solid, could make that decision. It just doesn't make sense.
Knowing that they were maybe struggling through so much without even telling anybody or talking about it. I think that's the thing that really gets to me too, is like, you never know what people are going through behind closed doors, you know? So it seemed like the most chill person or the most solid person in the room, but you're still battling through all of these things going on in your mind, and nobody will know about it.
Tell me about the situation with your sister.
So in November of last year, she actually went missing. It went viral. It went nationwide, and she missed her connecting flight to New York from LAX. And so my mom was the first one to kind of be like, oh, well, what's going on? You know, her phone last pinned at LAX, and, you know, I haven't heard from her. And she was supposed to meet with my aunt in New York. So they were supposed to go to like a show or something. And that's what kind of raised red flags. And from there was the whole process of, you know, the missing persons and filing reports, and then going on social media and spreading the word out. And then, of course, in Hawaii, it just totally blew up because it's so community based here. And then it just started just getting bigger and bigger, which, you know, we were super thankful for. But it was also like a blessing and a curse because it just was so overwhelming. Like millions of people were involved, and we just, you know, we're out here living on a rock, basically in the middle of the ocean, and we're not used to all of the, I don't want to say attention, but all of the just communication that people were throwing. But anyways, my dad and was the first one to go up there, like I said, and then it was my aunt and uncle. See, both of my aunts and their other halves, their husbands were up there, and they were searching for about I want to say almost 2 weeks. I was gonna go up there almost immediately, but my dad had asked me not to. Um, he was basically like, I feel like it was like maybe a weekend, and I was like, let me just come out there. And he's like, no, you have Maddox, you have to take care of him, like stay there at home in case Hannah shows up at home. Take care of your mom. You know, she's not doing well. She wasn't either. Like both of my parents were just, and I can't even imagine like having my child going missing out of nowhere. So I waited about a week, and then I just was like, you know what, I can't just stay here. Like I have to go and try to help her do something. And so when I went up there, my dad picked me up actually, and that was my first time seeing him in a little bit. And he just looked, I mean, I think that's something that I should have like maybe been more mindful about too, is that he just looked so, just like I said, defeated and lost. And, you know, he gave me like the biggest hug, and then he like started crying like uncontrollably, and he was shaking. And I just felt like I've never seen my dad like that before. Like how I said, I've never seen him show any type of like sadness or weakness or, you know, being vulnerable. And for me, that was just like, it really shook me to my core to see him like that. And so the next day we went out to like Skid Row in LA to look for my sister. And I only had like a day with him, like a full day. And that wasn't even a full day because we were all scattered out, putting posters and flyers up and everything, and just asking people for information. And then, you know, that night I had stayed in his hotel room with him because there were 2 separate beds, and I just was kind of worried about him. So, you know, I had a hard time getting him to go back to like, or to actually go to sleep in himself. And I like a sleep apnea machine. So I kept trying to put him down, like him and his best friend and I, we were just like trying to put him down. And he's like, no, I want to go out, look for Hannah. So we were just like, you just need to sleep. Like you need to sleep. You hardly ate today. Like you just need to sleep. And so he finally went to sleep about like half an hour after all of that. And we waited up a little bit, but we were also exhausted, you know, just being out all day. And then so the next morning, I think it was around 6 a.m., we got up, or I got up, and my dad was gone. His machine was still on, and he was gone. And then, you know, I was looking around, and I tried calling him, and his phone was there. It was vibrating. And that's when I was like, kind of like, it never crossed my mind that he would have done what he did. But I was like, well, that's weird because, it's a little colder up there than it is here. His jacket was there with his phone inside and his wallet was on the counter with everything. So yeah, I mean, we filed a police report. Um, a little bit after we went looking around the hotel in the lobby, at the coffee shop in the hotel. And then, after a little bit, we filed the report, and then the police finally like called my phone at around 11 a.m., which it was a few hours later. And then they, they called us and they told us to go into the room. And I had thought like in my mind, okay, well, maybe this is because my sister's case, like, maybe they want to keep something confidential. Maybe it has to do with something with Hannah or whatever. So they're like, oh, you guys all need to go up into the room. Sorry, there's this background. Yeah. And then so we all went up into the room, and then, we hear pounding on the door, and like 5 people come in, and it still didn't even hit me. Like, I just thought like, well, this is all new to us. So what do we, maybe it's just their protocol. And so, they're all just kind of looking out into the room with my family in the room, and we're all just squished in. And there's like 5 of us in there, and then there's 5 of these people coming in. And then they they come in and they say, oh, this is for Ryan Kobayashi. And I was like, we're like, yeah, like we're all like wondering what they're gonna say. And then they're like, well, Ryan Kobayashi, we're so sorry he passed away today. There was another person that had said that he had jumped off the parking lot structure, and we're still trying to even process the fact that he was gone. So to find out that way that it was suicide, I just felt like I got shot in the chest. And I think it was just very shocking too, because like I said, he would have been the last person for me to expect, or any of us to expect, to have done something like that. But I think he was just depleted of sleep and like just eating food, and being down there in LA too, and like being in Skid Row. Like I said, he was going on his day-to-day like routine of just retiring and living a kind of like more peaceful life. And then we go downtown LA, and then you see all of these things happen where it's just like open drug use. There's cops right there on the side. They're not doing anything about it. There's like prostitution going on like so openly. So I think that kind of just shocked all of us. And I think that's really something that pushed him over the edge, to think that his daughter was going through something like that. But I really wish that he would have talked to us about it or said something, because I would have definitely tried my best to get him help, or to just have a conversation with him, or just something to prevent him from doing that.
Sounds like he was feeling all this pressure with looking for your sister and being there, and that it was just super overwhelming for him in that moment. And rather than share that with you out of pride, he made that decision instead.
Yeah, I think so. It also didn't help either with the things that people were saying online about him. And I don't know how far he looked into it. I asked him to stay off of that. But people were commenting like just really obscene and just really disgusting comments about him, saying that he was involved or he looks suspicious. And like, it can really get to you. Like, and people don't really understand. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people understand that, like the whole thing about online bullying, but when you're really going through it and you really have to seriously go through it and you're in that position, it's definitely like a blessing and a curse all in itself. The amount of help that we got, but then the exposure part where people are just putting in their 2 cents just because they can and they want to be keyboard warriors, like it was just a lot of evil stuff on there. Like some of the things that we experienced during that time, it was just like mind blowing. Like it's things that you don't really think can happen in real life unless you're like in a movie or a series or something.
And people online, they don't care. There's that disconnect between things that are actually happening to real people and just entertainment, and people don't consider that there's actually human beings on the other side of it who are really suffering. And I think there's this, it's no excuse, but kind of a blending between reality and entertainment in our world today. If you think about all the documentaries and all the constant things that people are watching, and so many mysteries with the typical story formula, and then people think they're a detective and that they can just make those comments publicly and there's no culpability and whatever. It's just like a bit of entertainment for them. But for people who are going through the situation, and it can be really demoralizing and devastating.
After we lost my dad, I kind of was like in a state of mind where I was like, fuck this, honestly. Like everything, I just wanted to throw in the towel. And I just remember like telling myself when I found out the news, because I was ballistic, like I was like hysterically crying. And I remember just telling myself, you have to be okay for Maddox. Like you can't, I thought I was going to lose it. Like I've never felt like that in my life before, to the point where I just felt like I was going to mentally break because it was just so much happening at once. And it was literally like only a few weeks after my sister had gone missing and all of these things were happening around us. And I just felt extremely weak and just, yeah, I just remember telling myself, you got to be okay for your son. You have to be okay for Maddox. Like I just said it out loud to myself. And that's something that I'll never forget because it really did pull me back to reality. But I did go through a very dark and heavy phase after that. I flew home. I stayed in LA, just kind of just stayed in bed. I drank a lot the next day. I was incoherent because I just had so many emotions running through me and I didn't know what to do. So I couldn't fly for sure. So I did fly out the day after that and we came back home and yeah, I mean, my mom and my stepdad were there, to welcome me back and make sure I was okay. And my son was with his dad at the time because I just wasn't ready to see him yet. So it was helping me in that sense. But I really did feel like I just like lost two people. Like I feel like I lost my sister and now my dad's really gone. So it was very heavy. Um and you know, I didn't know how long it was gonna take for me to get out of this weird, like, funk that I was in. I can't even describe it. Like, I just felt like I was living in, like, a nightmare. Every morning when I'd wake up, it was like a constant state of, like, just wake up, like, sweaty palms, anxiety, and there was nothing like, it was just waking up. Like, I think maybe subconsciously just knowing that this was all still happening and, now it's like, okay, well, I wake up, my sister's gone, and then now with the news of my dad, it's like now he's gone. And I've never had to deal with grief in that form before where it's so sudden. It's always kind of been a little bit, I mean, of course, with certain people that were, I knew that had passed from suicide, I felt more for their family than anything. And now that I was actually involved in it with it being an immediate family member, it just hit different. So that whole month of December last year was just extremely hard for me, and I was really going through it. I did have a lot of dark thoughts. I did get into like a lot of dark places, and I had to pull myself out. And I think I know for a fact that my son is the thing that kept me, you know, and pulled me out of that dark place. He was a light in my darkness. So
Well, you're obviously an incredibly strong person to be able to go through that and get on the other side of it. I mean, one of those things happening to someone completely destroys people's lives, and it's impossible to imagine losing your sister, not having answers for that, and then losing your dad at the same time and not having answers for that either. Like, I can't imagine where you possibly begin to process that. What sort of support did you have, and from the rest of your family? Like, how did other people react?
I mean, I got a lot of, sympathy. A lot of people were, like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. But there comes a point where it's not that I'm ungrateful for that, but there comes a point where I was at that I was like, well, your words aren't going to bring him back, and I kind of got a little bit, and I don't know if that's rude or harsh of me to say, but I just heard it over and over again. And it just was a constant reminder that he was gone, and that he's not coming back. And so for me, I think that's to the point where I heard it so much that's to the point where I did numb myself. And I just kind of it was just noise after a certain amount of time because there were so many people involved in this that I think I had actually shut my social media off because of that for a little bit because I was trying to move forward and I didn't know how to navigate through that. So I think one of my moves was to just shut it off so that I could cancel out that noise and try in my own way to move past everything and move forward with my life, because I didn't know how.
How did you
Yeah.
start to pick yourself up from that and still be able to go on and get out of bed and do stuff?
I got help. I got a therapist who specialized in grief, and I would say I was going through depression at the time for sure. A lot of anxiety, a lot of like PTSD, which actually in a weird way connected back to things that I had gone through in my like years ago. And I never it was a really interesting experience for me because, the therapist that I had, she was great. She shared her experiences with me. We were able to connect on that vibe, like on that and align in that sense and be relatable to our both of our losses. Um, so that was really helpful. And I was inside for a long time, honestly. My social anxiety was shot. Like, I could, because it's an island here, and it's like I was going out and people were like, "Oh, are you," like, if I would go to grab, like, I'm not gonna lie, I was drinking, I was trying to numb myself. But, showing my ID to people at the stores, they're like, "Kobayashi, oh, are you Hannah's sister?" I'm like, "Yeah." And then so it kind of made me like crawl into my shell and internalize a lot. 'Cause I just didn't wanna deal with it anymore. But yeah, I mean, once I did pull myself out, I I did get a therapist. She did help me get back out and try to just do things like just little things for myself every day to get back out into the world, instead of just being cooped up in the darkness all day, which was extremely unhealthy, but it's the only thing that I knew how to do at that point. Um Going out, yeah, I mean, just being in nature or trying to be just being outside, even getting some sunlight, going out into the beach, just like grounding myself for a little bit, that helps so much. Journaling. Um, everyone's different though. Um, Sometimes it doesn't work for people, but I just tried to find things that were out of my comfort zone to try to get me back to myself and to find myself again because I really felt like I was losing a huge part of me. I mean, I did lose a huge part of me.
What about all the attention online? You switched off from it for a while. What happened with that? Did that take a long time to die down?
Yeah, I did. I still get people, messaging me and my family as well, asking like, "Oh, so what happened to Hannah?" And like, "Oh, are you okay?" And all of these things. And at this point, I kind of just say, thank you for your words, thank you for your condolences and everything. But I don't really go into it because with the outcome of everything, I mean, my sister, she did show up. I don't know why she did what she did. There are a lot of things that are still going on in my mind. And I mean, I've spoken to her. I spoke to her in December after my dad passed, and she didn't wanna say anything to me or tell me what happened. She didn't even wanna tell my mom what happened. She said it's her story to tell when she tells it. So I think for me, the final straw with me cutting the line with her was that she told me that it's not my fault what he did. That was his choice. She had no remorse for it, and that was my final, like that was my me basically disowning her as a sister because we did everything that we could as a family to try to look for her, and for her to have that kind of reaction was just beyond me. So, in reality, did I did lose a sister. I think that that was probably it might have been a harsh thing to do, but in all fairness, I think that just if I'm gonna continue to try to drive, like, if I continue to try to find answers that I'm never gonna get to, or questions that I'm always gonna have is just gonna circle in my mind, and I'm just gonna end up, like, driving myself crazy. So I had to cut that because it was just negative energy for me, and it was enabling me to move forward with my life and be the best version of myself that I could be for my son.
Wow. Sydney, there's just so much complexity to that situation, and it's hard to imagine being in your shoes. I think it's incredible that you're here now and speaking about this in this way and doing what you're doing with everything that you've been through. Should be really proud to be who you are and that you're the person that you are now, despite all this, and a good mother to your son. I think it's such a credit to you because it's just such a devastating thing to have to go through that so many people wouldn't be able to survive, I'm sure. What do you do
Thank
now
you.
when you have those questions pop up in your head and you have to stop your mind from snowballing?
What I've been doing that's been very therapeutic for me is like I'll either go to the gym or go for a run just to keep my mind off of it, or I'll clean and listen to music really loudly. Like, and like I think that just takes my focus off of it, because I mean that's the one of the things that has helped me a lot, because if I just sit around and like how you said, it'll just snowball. Um, or I'll call my best friend and talk to her about it, because she's just been there through the whole thing, and she knows the inside and out of everything. She's seen all of my emotions and all of that come out. So I think it helps to really, even if it's not even a therapist or a counselor, to just talk to somebody and let that out. I think it's so important to do that instead of keeping it bottled up, because it's only going to eat away at you inside.
Yeah, it's such an important message, and that is the tendency, is to keep it to ourselves. Feel like we're the only one who would understand that, or that we have to shoulder that burden, or you don't want to be a burden on anyone else. And that's actually the
Yeah,
mindset
exactly.
of when they take their lives in the first place, because they don't want to feel like a burden. Yeah, it's really difficult to not do that yourself. What about shielding your son from this? Just tell me about the difficulties around that balance.
So that was hard. I kept him from school for about a week just because, kids have, well, every kid has a phone nowadays, and it's understandable why. The world is becoming a very scary place. My son has a phone and he's 10, but I did keep him from school for about a week before I mean, just to shelter him from it. And also before I even told him that his papa had passed away. And I really was pushing that to the side because I was trying to run from it. I didn't want to tell him. They were extremely close, and he was also going through the whole thing with oh, my auntie's missing, and I don't think that he can fully wrap his mind around that until he's older. He might understand a bit more, but um, when I finally did have to tell him, it was because the schools were like, "Hey, like, we want to support you as best we can, but he needs to come back to school, or we're gonna have to start based on protocols, we're gonna have to start doing whatever they need to do," which is understandable because it was a long time. But yeah, when I did finally tell him, I think that was one of the hardest things that I had to do in my life. Was I basically told him that his grandpa had passed away from a broken heart. I didn't tell him the actual reason or what he did, because I wanted to protect him from that, and I don't think he needs to know yet. But it was very, like, it was heartbreaking having to tell him that, and he still struggles through it at school. He has a counselor that he sees, like, once or twice a week, but
Speaking to him and being his mom and trying to be positive, despite the situation, and does he bring it up?
he'll bring it up randomly. Like, he's very artistic, so he likes to draw a lot, and, he had drawn a picture of him and his papa, like, fishing. That was their thing. One day, just randomly, he seemed like totally fine. And I saw the picture, and, he's just like, he's like, "Mom, Mommy, I hope Papa sees this up in heaven." And like, yeah, he's still here with us. I try to be a positive influence in that sense, to be like, he's still here with us, he's not fully gone. And it's cute, every morning when I take him to school, the sun rises up on this side, so he'll wave at the sun and he'll say, "Hi, Papa." Just little things like that, so trying to just remind him, like, he's still present with us and he's still always going to be here, and he's still proud of you, and he'll be with you in every moment of your life. I think that really helps him. And then for me to also just tell him, like, "Son, if you're not having a great day, that's okay. And I want you to know that I'm always here for you to talk to me about it. Like, and even if you want me to just be quiet and you want to talk, I'm here. And if you want to cry, I'm still here. And that's okay. We're all going through this in our own ways." So I try to be as real about it as I can, but I just it's just so different for everyone, like, processing it in their different ways. But I also do try to do it a little bit different, where I show him that it's okay to show emotion. because I didn't really have that growing up, and I wish that I had more of it. So I think that that part helps a lot.
Oh, you sound like such a great mum, and you're making
Thank you.
generational change there. You're making generational change by letting him know that he can talk about these things and that you'll listen and won't judge him. And that's going to stand him in great stead to be able to hopefully talk about those challenges when they come up, and not feel like your dad felt, having to keep that inside. And that can be a way to honor your dad, and give your son the best life, is encouraging him to be able to be strong and be stoic, just like your dad was, but also to be able to be upfront and honest when he's going through something. I think that's such a great gift that you're giving him, and he's going to really benefit from that. And then also from seeing the way that you manage to, especially as he gets older and understands it more, that the way that you're still able to look after yourself and look after him and still be positive and move forward despite going through this.
It's one day at a time, and I'm just, trying my best as we all are.
How long has it been now?
His 1 year was on the 24th of November. So it's been a year. It's still hard. I don't think that it's something that will ever fully go away because it still hits in waves. Some days I'll be totally fine, and then something will make me think of him. And then it's like, shit, like this huge, like, cloud comes over, but you learn how to deal with it or cope with it, I guess, in your own little ways.
Have you reached out to other people who've gone through something like what you've gone through?
I've reached out to people that speak about it openly, or like even after just going on the other podcast I was on, a lot of people reached out and said, I'm so grateful that you decided to talk about it because I feel less alone now. And I think for me, that speaks volumes of the reason why I even did the podcast in the first place, is because I want people to feel like they're not alone. Because what I had gone through, like with my sister missing, like that's something that, and then my dad, like just back to back, it's something that you don't really think about having to deal with ever. And there was a point in time where I felt alone, and I felt like, man, I wish I had someone to talk to who's going through this exact same experience as me. Cause it's either one or the other, and I'm so grateful for all of the help that I did get, but I just really want people to know that they're not alone.
What does it do for you to hear other people's stories and to know that you're not alone?
It makes me feel like maybe that's one of my purposes as to why I'm here. I know for a fact my main purpose is being a good mom to my son. Like he's my entire purpose, my whole world. Having people reach out and reciprocate that, and just telling me that I was able to do something by speaking out and being brave about my story, it really makes me feel like I'm doing something right throughout all of this. And it's really like, when you go through something like that too, it's like a lot of times people are like, why is this happening to me? And I did feel like that a little bit. And then as more time passes by, now I'm kind of like, it happened for me. Like I have no control of what did happen with my dad or my sister. But now I'm seeing that maybe it happened for me for a reason, for me to try to help other people going through anything similar.
And you're turning that spirit into your own initiative.
444 is basically stemmed off of or based out of mental health awareness after everything that experience was I was put through, I guess, or our family was put through. So I wanted to create something that rooted in that area that could be a resource for other people. So I started a clothing line, which I'm launching next year, and it's gonna have a lot of mental health resources on there, and some of the profits will go to specific organizations for mental health, and that'll kind of rotate, depending on where our turnout ends up. So that's what I'm focusing on, just turning that pain into purpose and trying to just help anyone in whichever way I can through the journey that I had to go through.
How have you found your communities responded in hearing your story and seeing what you're doing with the clothing line? What have people said about the work you're doing?
They've been really supportive, especially with Hawaii being such a small island. and so community-based. Everyone's being very supportive and uplifting, which has been really helpful, because I feel like with any type of business, if you don't have that support, on the business aspect of it, if you don't have that support, you're not really going to go far. So it's nice to know that, the brand is being seen and I haven't even launched it yet.
And where are you at now with everything? It's been a year since you lost your dad and you've gone through a lot in that time. Where do you feel like you're up to in your own grieving process?
I've gotten a lot further than I was a year ago for sure. I just keep taking it day by day, and I keep it in the back of my mind that he's still here and he's still with us, just not physically anymore. So that helps me get through my days, and also just having like a good support system. I don't think that it's anything that's ever going to get easier, but it does help with, time passing by and finding ways to be able to cope with it and cope through it.
What do you feel like it's done for you in your personal journey? What do you think of the woman that you've become partly because of having to go through this pain and heartache?
It's definitely given me a lot more strength because I had to, have the strength to endure it. I didn't have any other option, especially me being a mom. For me, there's no other option. Like, I can't give up. I have to just keep going and keep pushing on and moving forward. So it's definitely given me strength in a lot of ways. And it's taught me a lot of lessons that I never thought I would learn about myself, going through those different types of emotions of like grief and depression and, even anxiety and loss. So you've grown a lot.
What would you say is the kind of world you want your son to grow up in, the kind of community you want him to grow up in when it comes to people being able to communicate?
In a perfect world, I would love for him to be surrounded with people who are kind and that can pass that on and, just be genuine and be themselves and not be afraid to be themselves. And also to just reciprocate good energy and like positivity because there's so much negative going on in the world. So I think it's like people like that really bring a light into others' lives. So I definitely try to instill that into him to just be kind and to remember that everyone's always going through something. Everyone's always going to have problems. It's a part of life and it's a part of what we go through.
Yeah. And I want to commend you on being a light yourself. You've responded to this in such an admirable way, going through multiple extreme difficulties and facing something that not many people would be able to get through in the way that you have. And then I think to use that tragedy and try to turn it into something that's going to help so many people, just because you want to try and use that pain for something good, I think that's an amazing thing. And it takes a lot of strength to drudge that up again and again and put a little piece of you out there every time that you do that. So yeah, I truly respect that.
Thank you. And same for you as well. As I've said, thank you for what you do. And, I'm grateful that we've connected and on opposite sides of the world. I'm really, truly grateful for what you do because it's not easy.
Thanks so much for sharing your story, Sydney. And it's great to get it in front of some Australians too. We don't hear from many Americans, but there are some Americans who follow the podcast. So it's always cool to speak to someone across the other side of the pond.
Thank you so much.
That's it for this episode. If you like what we're all about, support us by following Young Blood Men's Mental Health on Instagram and Young Blood Mental Health on TikTok. Every podcast episode is recorded in professional quality video and they're all up on our Young Blood Men's Mental Health YouTube channel. So please show some love and subscribe. You can find everything there is to know about the podcast at youngbloodmensmentalhealth.com. And most importantly, please share these stories with anyone in your life who needs to know they're not alone. We're all in this together. Catch you next time.